Well, welcome back to another coffee and a chat. And yeah, I've moved again. Well, I'm still in the same place. I just moved to a different wall. Um, I might end up liking this better. I'm still rearranging, trying to find out what's going to work. Yeah. So, because of some of the future plans I have for this space, and because I've got some things that are coming possibly today that that I picked up from our friend who passed away. Um, he had like a lot of big whiteboards, and so I'm getting one of those, and that's going to work better for me on that wall over there where I did have my chair, so that I can see it and I can put my scriptures on it and stuff. So that is possibly coming here today, and I needed to move things around so I could put it there because it wasn't going to work on the. Oh, I do like rearranging furniture though. I do like making new feels. And then, you can see my funny little lamp here that is also this came out of a house that was being tore down. And we got to go through, and because there were some things left behind, and before, because they just brought a bulldozer in and flattened that thing. But before they did, they let some of us go through, and if there was anything we wanted, well, this lamp was in there, and I kind of like this lamp. It's very old, but it's pretty cool. But I guess my light bulb burnt out. So yeah, so I've got to go find another light bulb and change that out. And then I think I have yet another lamp that will be going in here too. And I don't know. I guess it's kind of fun. But anyway, I wanted to share a story with you today that I haven't shared for a while. I've been wanting to. I just haven't got to the right point. And today I just kind of feel the Lord kind of stirring me up, and so we're going to try it. But before I do, I want to ask you something. I want you to think about something. What if you knew you only had a short time left to live? What if you found out that you might just have a few months to live, or a few weeks, or a few days? Would something change in your life? Would you do something differently? Is there somebody you would call that you're not calling now? Someplace you maybe want to go visit? I don't know. But if you knew that you just had a limited time left, would you do some things differently? Because I think we probably all would. I think for the most part, we just kind of think that life's going to go on. And we don't know how long any of us have. I knew a young 17-year-old boy, athlete, healthy, the apple of his mother's eye. And he played on the football team in our little town. And they're getting ready for a big game. They were tossing the ball back and forth on the sideline, warming up. And this kid just collapsed right there. And like that, he was gone. And there was no bringing him back. There was no warning. That really kind of messed a lot of people up, because this kid was, you wouldn't expect this. He was in great shape, so much energy, so much strength. I think he participated in probably every sport that school offered. And it turned out that he had a heart defect that nobody had ever known. And his heart just stopped, and there was no getting it started. And then I've known other people, a family member that was diagnosed with a rare kind of cancer and was in a very, very, very advanced stage when they found out. Told him, you just got a few months to live, get your life in order. I don't even know how many years ago that was now. Oh my goodness. That was a long time ago. Maybe 20 years ago even. Everybody else in his family's gone. He's still here. So just because the doctor gives us, you know, a time frame, they don't know. I come back to that. We all have an expiration date, because in Psalm 139, he said that he wrote down in his book, before they even existed, all the days that he had ordained for my life, the days he had chose for my lifespan. And we've talked about that we've seen God, King Hezekiah in the Bible, God extended his life 15 years beyond his expiration date. I believe that God extended my dad's life 10 years beyond his expiration date. And then there are probably some people that get called out a little sooner than their expiration date because they're doing nothing but damage. So really, we don't have any idea, no matter what's going on. I've had cancer before, a few times, and I'm sure I'll share some of those stories with you. But, there were times when I was convinced this was it. I wasn't going to make it. And when my girls were little, the first time that I received a diagnosis of cancer and went through my treatments and did everything I was supposed to do and a few extra things too. I was trying really hard to keep everything in my favor. I was in my 20s. I had 2 small girls, and I wanted to be there for their lives, to watch them grow up. And I wanted to, be there for their graduation. I wanted to be there at their weddings. I wanted, all those dreams, that we have for our little kids. And so I, instead of getting better, when they told me you're going to start feeling stronger, you're going to start feeling better, you're on the upswing now, I was feeling worse, a lot worse. And I was convinced, well, this is it. And I had a shoebox full of letters. I would sit there while my girls were at school or taking naps or whatever was going on, and I would write letters. This is for your 16th birthday. This is for when you have your first baby. This is for, and I had all these different envelopes with their names and letters for each one of them, because I was so selfish and wanted to be a part of their lives so much that even if I was dead, I was going to find a way to be there. That's right. And, but that whole thing ended up being that I had uterine cancer at the time. And in the midst, so I'm going to, spoiler alert, but in the midst of having uterine cancer, I ended up getting pregnant. And I wasn't even supposed to be able to be pregnant. They had already told me that I was sterile a couple of years before, that I would never be able to have more children. And I'd been all depressed about that, but okay too. I had these wonderful girls. But in the midst of this, it turned out I ended up getting pregnant, and which was impossible on so many levels, but I did. And that's my son. And that I didn't know that one was going to happen. He was such a blessed surprise. And, and then of course it was all these things that could go wrong. I should just tell that story today. We're going to take a switch here, and I'm not going to tell you the story I was going to tell you. I'm going to tell you this one. So they, when they found out I was pregnant, which was hilarious. Have I told this story on here before? If I have, forgive me, I'll tell it again. Because probably the funniest thing about it was when they told, okay, I had been treated for uterine cancer. Everything, I got through my treatments. They had been shooting poison into my uterus for, I think it was like 3 months. I was bedridden during this whole time. My girls, we lived in a duplex with my in-laws. I was married to my first husband, of course. And so my father-in-law would take my girls to school in the morning, and my husband would bring them home in the afternoon. And And I, a lot of times, didn't even know what was going on. I was so out of it, so sick. And so when everything was said and done, and I had my last treatment, and and then some time for, because then you got all that poison in your system too, and so it took some time for that, to be being flushed out of my system. And then and they were, my doctor kept saying, you're going to be feeling better, you're going to be feeling stronger. Well, I didn't. I felt worse and worse. I couldn't keep anything down. I was suffering from malnutrition pretty bad. I was losing weight, and which I've never really minded when that happens, but but it wasn't for good reasons that I was losing weight. And so anyway, I was supposed to be in my younger brother's wedding, and so we had to travel to another state where my parents lived and where my brother lived. And so anyway, I ended up falling down a flight of stairs and being hauled off to the hospital, and then them giving me stuff because I had a concussion, and they kept asking me, are you pregnant? I'm like, no, I'm not pregnant. I can't be pregnant. I can't get pregnant. I'm sterile. And they're like, okay, because we would never give you this drug if you were pregnant. And they'd give me something, and and they were trying to get me stable and everything. And so then they sent me home at that time, because over my lifetime, there were times when if you had a concussion, you're supposed to keep the person awake. Then at this point, they're like, well, she has a concussion, so go let her sleep. They sent me home. Okay, I should have been one more time that they should have admitted me to the hospital, but no, they sent me to my mom, and Dad told my mom, go home, tuck her in bed, let her take a good nap. If she lives, she'll live. If she dies, she'll die. Oh, my word. No wonder I've had such an identity crisis in life and been insecure. Does anybody care? My mom cared. So while I was there, that happened to be where my oncologist was in this town where my parents lived. And so so an appointment was made for me while I was taking a concussion nap, and I was hauled off to see my doctor that day. This guy, he's not in practice anymore. He retired a lifetime ago, but he was the most amazing doctor. If I had an issue, he'd see me that day. Come in right now. How soon can you get here? And I lived 3 or 4 hours away. And, and there was one time I remember I said, well, tomorrow sometime after 10 work better, okay for you? And he's like, yeah, name the time. He was such a good doctor. And when we were homeless, I was still dealing, because I dealt with cancer for many years. And so they wanted me on this oral chemo for the rest of my life, right? I didn't have insurance. I didn't have money. I was homeless. Do you know my oncologist paid for my medication to make sure I had it? That's how great this guy was. And then when we weren't homeless anymore, I kept sending him money, trying to pay him back. And he's like, no. He was a follower of Jesus. And to the letter, this guy was amazing. But I did not react well to oral chemo, so I could no longer take that. And that's when, everything really changed then. That's when I'm like, you know what, I'm putting this in God's hands, and whatever God decides is what it's going to be. And I've been cancer-free ever since. I don't know now. I don't go to doctors anymore, but that's me. I do me, you do you. But and that's just been because that's what life happened, and I couldn't go to the doctor. And now I just, even if I could, I don't know that I would. But anyhow, I was cancer-free after all that, because they check me a couple times a year, and always cancer-free. But at the time when I ended up getting pregnant, I didn't know I was pregnant. They carted me off to the doctor's office, and I was, like, well, I'm dying. That's all there is to it. And so my doctor, he goes, well, we need to, let's do an exam. Let's take a look, see what's going on. And, and he goes, this isn't good, because you should be feeling better. You shouldn't be, and he's looking at me, he goes, you don't look good. You should look a lot better than what you're looking. And so, let's take a look here. Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you come in? Because I'm going to die. I'm dying. That's all there is to it. I've left letters from my girls. so maybe they won't forget me. I mean, I was downer, man. So he, and I have this concussion, so I'm throwing up in the meantime too. And he's having his nurse come in because that was nurse. Okay, so it wasn't perfect. That's nurses' work, not doctors. So he'd have her come in, take care of that, and then he took care of the other end. Well, as he's doing his exam, pretty soon I hear him kind of giggle. And I'm like, what is wrong with him? And so then he pops his head up and he starts asking me some questions. And he's kind of laughing. I'm like, hey, I'm dying here. This is not a time to. It's one of those, don't make me laugh. I'm upset right now and I want to be upset. And so he goes, okay. And then he starts, talking about all this stuff. I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, and I'm like going, yeah, because I'm dying. And he goes, these are all classic signs of pregnancy. And I'm like, what? And he goes, I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be funny if you were pregnant? I go, oh, yeah, that'd be hilarious because I can't get pregnant and I wanted 12 kids and I only got 2 and this isn't funny. Oh, that poor doctor. And so he goes, I know it's impossible. But he goes, remember, with God, all things are possible. Maybe he has another child for you and you just don't know it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not it. I'm dying. I'm not going to live. This is, you think I'm pregnant and it's all that signs of pregnancy and it's really signs that I'm dying. And so he goes, well, I'm going to put an order in for you to go get a pregnancy test. I want you to go downstairs to the lab and let them do some blood work and let's see what's going on here. And then he goes, it was a holiday weekend. I was supposed to be in this wedding the next day. Oh, that was something because I was black and blue from falling down the stairs. That's another thing. That's not a good thing to do when you're pregnant, and especially if you're having a high-risk fragile pregnancy. But I didn't know yet. So we go down to the lab, and my husband's like, "Where are we going? What test is he running?" And I hand him the envelope because he had put it in an envelope in case I didn't want to get my husband's hopes up. But my husband is the guy that never wanted kids, so it wasn't going to get his hopes up, I didn't think. But, he goes, so, until we knew anything. So anyway, I just hand him the envelope. He looks, he goes, this is for a pregnancy test. I go, yeah, I know. And there was some poor man in the elevator with us. I have no idea. He got on when we got on. And so he's hearing this conversation. I'm like, yeah, I know it's a pregnancy test, but I'm not pregnant. I have cancer and I'm going to be dead soon. And this guy's kind of like, he pushed a button he hadn't pushed up for the next floor and he got off the elevator. Yeah, he didn't really want to hang out with me. I wasn't any fun. So we get downstairs and we go, it's this big hospital medical center. And so we go to the lab and there's all these young women in there, right? And so the lab techs go, hey, all you gals are here to get pregnancy tests. And they're like, whoa, and party time. So I go, so what we're going to do is we're going to take you all back together so you can all be together. Well, so we're clearing out one of the big areas and then you can all get your pregnancy tests together. Won't this be fun? And they're like, yeah, this is great. And I'm like, the gal sitting next to me, can hear me. I go, yeah, but I got cancer and I'm dying. I'm not pregnant. And so she just kind of looked at me like, okay. And so they get us, get the room ready and they take us all back there and we're kind of lying down a hallway because there was like 20 women, easily that were getting pregnancy tests. And so they're just trying to make a celebration out of it, and I'm just like, yeah, and mine's going to be negative because I have cancer and I'm dying. And so the lab techs go, okay, who wants to go first? They all point at me, go, take her and get her out of here because she is ruining the party. So they sat me down in the chair and strapped my arm down, took my blood and got me out of there. And I was like, I don't care because I ain't pregnant. I got cancer and I'm going to die. Yeah, although all you guys that hate negative confessions, you would have really hated me that day. So I get through the wedding and and we went over to the beach and to a little town that's kind of like a carnival town, and to take the girls on some rides, and they wanted to go on bumper cars. And so my husband took our oldest on one, and then I got on one with our youngest. And then this really weird thought came up, because I'm just kind of going through the motions of things with a real negative attitude. And I'm bummed. I'm depressed. I'm like, I did not have the right attitude in me that even if it was cancer, that it's okay, and live every life to the fullest. No, I had buried myself before I'd even died, and I wasn't dying. We just didn't know it yet. And so I'm on this bumper car with our youngest daughter. And I don't think she was really having that much. I think it was one of those things that looked like fun, but then when people were hitting us, it wasn't as much fun as she thought. And so, anyway, this thought went through my mind, but if for some weird, miraculous reason you are pregnant, being on a bumper car probably wouldn't be the smartest thing in the world. And then I'm looking at her, and she's not really having, I'm like, do you want to get off? And she's like, yeah. And so as soon as that one came to an end, because my husband just kept giving him more money to keep us going, and I'm like, we're done. And so Autumn and I got out of our bumper car, and we went and I got an ice cream cone for her or something, and sat and watched them for the rest of the time. And she was just fine then. She was a lot happier off that bumper car than on. And then I'm like going, why would I even think that? Because I'm not pregnant. I can't be pregnant. That's not what this is. But yet, well, come Tuesday, because it was holiday weekend. Monday was the holiday. So Tuesday, I get the call. And it's not my doctor this time. It's his nurse calling me, which is unusual, because he always was the one that would talk to me on the phone. He had to tell me all kinds of things over the phone that normally he would tell me in his office, but I lived too far away. But see, he was the best cancer specialist on that whole coast for the kind of cancer I had. And God opened the door for me to go there. And so he never turned me away, and said, you gotta, you live too far away or whatever. He worked with us and how, doing my treatments and stuff I was able to do actually at home. I mean, it was pretty cool. So anyhow, what ended up happening was she was saying to me that I was pregnant, that the pregnancy test came back positive. And she's like, isn't that exciting? I'm like, what are you talking about? I can't be pregnant. I have cancer. I'm dying. She goes, well, your blood work, other than, you've got some serious vitamin deficiencies, she goes, it really wasn't that bad, but you are definitely pregnant. And it turned out, I think I was 5 months along by the time that we did that pregnancy test. I can't remember now, but I was pretty far along. And then there's a whole nother story of what I had to go through to find somebody who would deliver. It was either I was going to have to move and live with my mom and dad during my pregnancy so that my oncologist could, because he was a gynecological oncologist, that he could would deliver my baby for me, because it was a very high risk pregnancy. But I didn't want to leave my husband and my daughters, and they weren't going to go with me because they had school and he had to work, and and so it was like, if I went, I was going to have to go along. I really don't think my husband wanted me to leave and go. He was not making it easy, but I didn't want to go away from them. And so I had to, where I lived was a pretty big area, and I had to find a doctor to deliver my baby. And I went through every single doctor in the area. And they all were like, I don't want to touch this. And then there was one doctor's name left on the list, but this doctor had been sued for malpractice a lot and was being sued even then. And if she lost this lawsuit, like she'd lost the others, then it would be the, however many marks against her, she was going to lose her license. But she was the only one I hadn't seen yet. And I was out of options. So I went to her, and of course she's like, oh yeah, I'll deliver your baby. Whole other story. But I fractured 7 teeth from malnutrition. I was pasty pale, and it was not a picture of health. And I spent most of my pregnancy in bed. But I had the healthiest baby I've ever had. And see, that's the thing. That was before, when they didn't do ultrasounds like they do now. That wasn't part of your pregnancy. But see, because of the iodine they'd been shooting into my uterus, and because of some of the medications that I'd been given, the side effect, if you were pregnant, was that the fetus would not develop a head, and it would just be a parasite in your body. And they told me that that's what they were pretty sure was going on. So they wanted to do an ultrasound. And if this was the case, then they wanted me to let them terminate the pregnancy. Now, I'd never been faced with that kind of a decision before. And now my attitude was very different, because, oh my word, God's giving me a miracle. See, I had come to a point where I had said to the Lord, before I found out I was pregnant, or that I might even be a possibility, I'm tired. I am so tired, and I don't want to fight this anymore. So here's the thing. It's your choice anyway. So if it's time to take me home, then go ahead and take me home. Or give me life and heal me. But it's your decision. And because I just kept feeling worse and worse, I was convinced God had decided it was my time to go home. But when I found I was pregnant, then it was like, is this his way of saying, I'm giving you life, literally giving you life in your body because you're going to live? But see, then there was all these questions about the pregnancy. And so they sent me for this ultrasound. Plus, they had no idea when I was due. And even after the ultrasound, they had the position of the baby gave them one date, the development of the baby gave another, or not the position, the size of the baby gave them one date. The development of the baby gave them another, and the position of the uterus gave them yet another. And so this doctor, she goes, I don't know when, because I had to have C-sections because I have a closed pelvis. And so she's like, what do you think? And I told her, I gave her this date, and I said, because I knew in my spirit, first off, the ultrasound, I'm jumping around. The ultrasound was a perfectly formed baby. They couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl, but a perfectly formed baby. And I told him, you can turn that monitor around, let me see my baby. And I knew then that baby's going to live and I'm going to live, because that's God's answer. I knew it. And no matter when they would start going, oh, we don't know about, I'd like, then I was complete opposite. Oh no, this is life. That baby's going to be just fine. In fact, it's a boy. He knew, because God had given me a dream, and I saw my son in the dream. Yeah. How long have I gone? 28 minutes, almost 29 minutes. We're going to go a little longer. Yeah, this is my son, Chase. This is where he came from. So I told this doctor on such and such a date, which is his birthday, you have to take him by that day, because if you wait a day beyond that, we will be in danger of dying. And so she goes, well, that happens to be my birthday. So I did take an extra long lunch hour to go do something for my birthday, but I guess I'll give that to you and we'll have your baby for my birthday on my lunch hour. And I was like, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And so that was when he was born. And they determined from then that they thought he was about 6 weeks past due. He was already starting. I mean, he had hair down to his shoulders, long maybe not that long, but long fingernails that they had to cut. And he was starting to get yucky. And he was grown. That kid was walking at 7 months. Okay. He was very, very developed when he was born, but he was healthy, the healthiest child I ever gave birth to. And I had this dream when everybody was saying they weren't sure what was going to happen. And in this dream, I saw us at this church that we used to go to that was in a little town near where we lived. And my oldest daughter, was wearing a blue coat. And my youngest daughter was wearing a red fuzzy coat. And they were walking up the steps to go up to the doors of this church. And between them, they were holding hands with this little boy, this baby boy, that was toddling up the steps in this little red jacket with a hood that came to a point that made him kind of look like a Cupid doll. And that dream, was one of those dreams when I knew there was something significant there. And so I'm like, I'm going to have a son. I mean, we had a girl's name just in case, but I knew I'm going to have a son. And so sure enough, okay, so after he was born in the spring. That fall, going into winter, this lady from my mother-in-law's church gave us a box of clothes from her girls as hand-me-downs from my daughters. And in there was the blue coat for my oldest daughter, for Amber. And in there was the red fuzzy coat for my daughter, Autumn. And I was like going, okay, this is strange. What's going on? And about that time, a woman that worked at the radio station where my husband was working, she had a little boy like a year before my son was born. And he was a big boy. My son was a big boy. They called him Tank when the day he was born. Well, here's Tank, because he's a big boy. And so she would give me hand-me-downs for him, right? Love hand-me-downs, guys. And in there was the little red jacket with the red hood that came up to a point and made him look like a Cupid doll. So I go, guess what, guys? We're going to do a road trip. So I had they all got on their coats, and I drove them out to this little town, to our old church. And I said, I want you guys to go over to this. And by then, my son was toddling around. I mean, he could walk with you holding his hands. I go, I want you to walk over to the steps and start going up the steps. So they went over there. And, the light came on. Maybe I don't need I don't know what's going on. Maybe I got a short. Ooh, that's not good. Okay. So what happened then was my oldest daughter stood here, just like in my dream. My youngest daughter stood here, just like in my dream, with my son between them. And they reached up and they took hold of his hands and walked up those steps. And it was the fulfillment of that dream, that God's promise was there. And my son lived. Now, when he was like 3 years old, he got really sick with a virus, and they never could figure out what it was. And he almost died. And that's another story for another time. But see, my son Chase, all my kids, there's a call on their lives. Whether they acknowledge it or not, there is a call on their lives. And God has kept them alive, and God has literally brought them through the fire. And whatever He has set for them, He will accomplish. This morning when I pulled the card I pulled out of my treasure box was Ephesians 1:11. And it says, furthermore, because we are united with Christ, we have received an inheritance from God, for He chose us in advance, and He makes everything work out according to His plan. God has plans for my children. Does He have plans for yours? Yes. God has a plan for my life. Does He have a plan for yours? Yes. So the story I was going to tell you today, I'll tell you that one on another day, because this just kind of happened, didn't it? And yes, we've gone over, we're at 35 minutes just about now, in just 10 seconds. That's okay. That's okay. The only one that'll bug is my husband, because I talk too long. But I guess it just took a little more time to say what God wanted to say today. So I'm glad I got to share that with you. It encourages me. It reminds me how it doesn't really matter what anybody else says. It's what God says that matters. It's what God says that will take place. All right. I love you guys. You have an awesome day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.